I used to go to the school, I used to speak my mother tongue. And then the teacher, they used to say that, why you are talking this man-eater language, they said. But I really didn't want to go to school, right? But I wasn't angry, but I felt kinds of humiliated. So I started looking things differently. That's what the things. And when you started looking about these things minutely, you find the number of examples you can see everywhere, that how people are being treated differently.
When we grew up, of course, we had no idea about Indigenous identity. But during that time, we already felt that we were discriminated against, we were laughed at, and so people did not want to identify ourselves as Indigenous. But in terms of agriculture, our own system was much more intact. We lived next to the paddy fields, we practically were self-sufficient, but we were also always seen as poor.
It was really hard to break down that systemic racism that we experienced in those days. There weren't that many expectations on us, we'll eventually just become meat workers or something like that. So they're just Aboriginal people, we can't expect too much of them. Right through to shops and jobs and houses. I don't know how many times I got knocked back for houses from trying to rent houses from real estate agents in Rockhampton, and only to find that it's still vacant a week later. But what's the problem with us?
Well, historically and today, it had been a continuous process of deprivation, of alienation from the society, from the state, from governance as such, And
what we see among the common challenges facing Indigenous peoples around the world are patterns of ongoing discrimination that are rooted in histories of colonization and oppression of Indigenous peoples that have resulted in the taking of their lands and the marginalization of their communities, their women, their children in various ways. Also the breakdown or assaults on Indigenous peoples' culture as part of that discrimination. Indigenous peoples' rights over lands and resources according to their historical traditional patterns are frequently not respected and violated across the globe.
There is this big gap of knowledge that our people need to overcome before they can be what they aspire to be. And so yes, logging, oil palm development and extractive industries bring them a lot of cash also suddenly, but then that's also taking their lifestyles away from normal subsistence economy into a cash economy, and they don't know how to manage or replace that former livelihoods that they had. And so the negative impacts there is that people end up poorer than they're supposed to be, or they were.
I've met Indigenous communities and have come to appreciate and have a real understanding of how oppressed they are. They are the First Nation, and they have to continually prove their identity and who they are. And they're being exploited in many ways. They really need their human rights to be protected.
Well, I think whatever indicators you use to measure how well human rights are realised amongst people in your communities, Indigenous people as a group right around the world come up usually at the bottom of all the key social and economic indicators in terms of income, work, education, health. So if you're a national human rights institution, you need to be focusing on who are the people that are most at risk of human rights violations and abuse, whose human rights are least realised. And Indigenous peoples as groups within our borders will be one of those groups.